What's up, YouTube? So I want to talk a little bit about my philosophy as a parent. And in this video, I'm going to explain why we choose to homeschool. And technically, I got to put a little asterisk by that because we don't actually homeschool. Because homeschool is you're just bringing school into the home. But for all general, people who are just kind of mainstream, who might be watching this video, I'll put it like this. Yes, we homeschool, as in we educate from home, rather than putting our kids into the school system. And here's why. That school system that we have. First question, for you as a parent, did you genuinely like every aspect of school? Like, did you go to school and enjoy the classes? Did you enjoy the teachers? And don't BS yourself into just remembering the fun times, like when you got to go on, a field trip. Or you had your best friend, was in your class and sat next to you, for a while. I mean, the average day today. I mean, on Sunday when you had to do homework before getting ready, and then Monday morning you gotta wake up, and your mom pulls you out of bed because you gotta wake up. And like I remember when I was a kid, getting out of bed, not wanting to, turning on the shower, and then laying down on the ground next to the shower because I just wanted to sleep more. And that was for years of my life, or waiting for the bus and it being freaking cold and everything. I'm just I hated it. And I went to a nicer school, and my parents didn't mean bad. They weren't going to homeschool. I'm not blaming them that they didn't homeschool me. And even in that sense, I wouldn't have wanted to be homeschooled as well. It just was what it was. But when I look at the current state of the world, when I look at the current state of where the economy is going to be over the next 10 years, and especially when I look at today, the level of brainwashing happening is insane at schools. This whole TikTok culture thing that we've collectively built is insane. I am very, very intentional with my kids that they don't have screens, they don't have iPads, they don't have iPhones, and they're not gonna for a long, long, long time. It doesn't mean I don't occasionally, watch a little video with my son, on some little YouTube video, and we'll watch it together, but I explain it all to him, right? Because I don't want him getting addicted to the stuff. So, without going down a whole rabbit hole on any of those topics, I just want to explain this. My philosophy as a parent is, before me and my wife had kids, we were very intentional. We made an agreement on what our relationship and our marriage is going to be about. And when we have kids, how we want to raise them, what values we want to instill in them, what character traits we want to instill in them, how we want to educate them, how we're going to do everything in our power to ensure that they're ready to thrive in the world. Not just get by, not just get some nice little, job just to pay their bills, but actually fundamentally them as a human being fulfill their fullest potential. That's our commitment. It's been our commitment since day one. It's not the easiest thing. It's easier to throw them in daycare. It's easier to, see, I think you see what I'm saying, where in some sense, yeah, it's easier to do that. But in another sense, it's not actually easier. Because then you miss little things. And then your kid comes home with a certain behavior or a certain expression, and you don't know where it came from. Then you don't know how to direct it. So I'll give you an example. The other week, we had a family over that's involved with the education group that we built locally. And they're also kind of looking at homeschooling but anyway, we're like, okay, let's have our kids hang out because they're basically the same age. And what was interesting is just from even 2 hours being together, I noticed my son picked up on some things from the other kid. And I'm sure that kid did too for mine. That was a very intentional environment. And we're not like helicopter parents. I'm not watching their every move and directing everything. We let them play. If one of them pushes the other one, it's we let them do that. We'll talk, we'll interact. We'll be like, hey, dude, do you want to be pushed over? What is that, right? But we're very intentional with how we design the environment because how quickly these kids pick up things from each other. So from my perspective, me as the husband and as the father of my relationship, my goal is work my ass off so my wife doesn't have to work. Now I realize you watching this, one, you might be triggered by that, or you might not be in that current situation, and that's okay. If right now you're in a situation where you're at least watching this and you're like, dude, I can't afford to pay the bills for also my wife to not work. Okay, that's where you're at. I'm happy to meet you where you're at and help you create a game plan, because ultimately, wouldn't you want to at least have the choice if your wife had to work or not? And ultimately, when you want the choice, like imagine you could have the greatest freaking home education environment ever. I'm talking, you have the nicest freaking library of any book on any subject. You have expert friends and people in your community and tutors, where if your son wants to learn how to play freaking piano, you have a really cool tutor who can come, because you may not be an expert in piano and you may not want to learn how to be an expert in piano, but you may not just be content watching little YouTube videos on it. Like maybe you want someone to actually come over and teach your son. Okay. Or wouldn't you want to have an environment where you could like build stuff, like maybe a woodworking shop or like a pottery studio and things like that? So that's when I'm talking about the ideal setup for educating from home. That's more what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about sitting at the kitchen table doing textbooks. Like that sounds boring and painful. Now, here's the awesome thing. With what I'm involved in and the community that I've been part of for the past 5 years, it's a specific education group. If you're interested in this, reach out to me because we create amazing custom plans for families. But what it looks like is the kid does their lesson. It's specific. It's like the vocabulary, the concepts, kind of the curriculum, you could call it, for about 20 minutes a day on average. Could be a little bit less. And again, depending on the age, if they're like really little, like a 2-3-year-old, they're going to be doing like 8 minutes a day. That's the actual lesson. But here's what happens. Because that lesson is so freaking good that the kid actually understands it, now that kid wants to participate in that. And I'll give you an example. My son, since he was young, wanted to learn the vocabulary of like farming, how to take care of animals, animal sounds, like little kid stuff. But like, it wasn't just like, he's like, ooh, I want to, moo like a cow just because I'm going to get everyone to laugh. It's like, no, he's actually like, I want to know, like, how does this work? Like, he'll drink a glass of milk. And it's like, you can tell he actually wants to understand, like, oh, the milk comes from the cow. Oh, but wait, goats have milk too. Like, you can see he's piecing his reality together. And he's freaking 2.5. Here's the point. When you build a child's inner structure, inner architecture, which is their vocabulary, their understanding, their conceptual knowledge, their critical thinking, that starts getting built at age 0. That when they're out of the womb, that it starts. When you do that well, they will naturally have a desire and a passion to want to learn and to want to explore. It's so cool. And so now, like, we get all these books on like farming and yes, of course we get little kids books and they got pictures and everything. But then my wife is also like studying like Joel Salatin, and then these like, there are farms kind of near us where we live where they actually have like a proper business and they do like regenerative farming or permaculture or biodynamic farming. There's all these terms. Now, my son is getting exposed to that. Now, someday, maybe he'll want to be a farmer. But realistically, he'll probably want to disrupt how all of farming is happening, more like how a Steve Jobs saw computers and wanted to disrupt that industry. Or how a Jeff Bezos saw, retail and online e-commerce and saw he could disrupt the whole thing. That's more how I'm training my son to think. Now, whatever full level he gets to, that's going to be a combination of me and my wife supporting him and our community supporting him, but also his own will, his own volition, you could say. That's how I'm preparing my kids. And that's why we homeschool, you could say. That's why I call it educating from home. Because there's so many little moments of teaching. I'll give you one more example. It was Saturday, this past weekend, and we were driving home. We went to the mall. I'm going to an event this week, and I had to just get some new like dress shirts. So okay, let's make a fun family outing of it. We walk around, and the whole time I'm at the mall. We're at the Mall of America. There's a lot of stuff going on there. We're walking around, I'm just explaining it to my son. We walk into a store and, it's got certain things on the walls. And, there's certain stores, obviously, we don't go into. If there's like crazy flashing lights or music or whatever, like, I'm not going to go there because I don't want to just impulse him with that, But, we go into the store, I'm trying on clothes, I'm just explaining stuff to him. And then what's so cool is like when we were driving home, this is Saturday night, we're listening then to a podcast. I forget what we were listening to, like, it's like the history of aviation. And so we're listening about the Wright brothers and how they like invented the airplane and like the whole backstory behind that. And we're listening to it and we're talking about it and we're explaining how like airplanes weren't always a thing. And then we're looking out the window and seeing like birds flying and we're explaining that like you can actually understand these things. You can understand like aviation and aeronautics and all these things. So we're explaining that to my son on a freaking Saturday night. Whereas I remember when I was a kid, not that young, but when I was a kid, it was like, okay, learning is for when I'm at school. And then when I'm at home, that's for like having fun and like playing with toys and watching movies and stuff. And again, it's my parents, they were just they were doing the best that they knew how. They didn't necessarily understand how, and my mom would read books and stuff to me and all that, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like they had a need to have to do that, because back when I was in school, whatever, 20 years ago, it was kind of like the path was laid out for you. It's like you go through school, you go to university, you get a good job, and you can work your way up in the system. The thing is, that's changed drastically over the last 10 years. And like really the last 4 years since AI became mainstream. And now you have like even these really high paid tech jobs are now they're no longer hiring because AI can do a lot of this stuff for them. And then even like the trades, like I made a post yesterday on my Facebook of this. It was like it was like a robot that they place on the roof, and it places like all these shingles all at once. So even people in like roofing and construction are going to lose their jobs to robotics and AI. And so it's like a tornado is happening right now, and everything's getting shaken up. But the way through it's more like I'll call it a hurricane. If you look at a hurricane, you can see it coming. Then it comes in and it's really intense and it shakes up everything and it throws everything, and it can actually be very dangerous. That's what's happening with the economy in the world right now. Now, our decision is either to say, okay, I'm going to just freak out and hope I get by, or I'm not going to think about it, and just it's like avoidance. Or you can say, no, I'm going to be in the center of this hurricane where it's calm. But in order to do that, you have to actually go through the storm. You have to be very intentional with it. That's what I'm doing for myself. That's what my wife does for herself. We have a whole community of people doing this, and then especially for our kids. So that my kids, and I want this for your kids too, and I want this for all the kids in the world, that they can pick up any book on any subject. They can watch any video on any subject. That they can learn anything, that they can have access to places where they can do, have access to like a 3D printer and like, woodworking. And then they can also learn AI. But I'm not talking about just like, oh, great, let's just have them watch Khan Academy. It's like, that's still so limited because Khan Academy is still, they're only just trying to memorize stuff. I'm not talking about memorizing stuff. I'm talking about fundamentally understanding how reality works. That's real education. Fundamental understanding of how reality works, how everything fits together. When you have that, you will automatically become entrepreneurial. You will automatically look to understand, okay, what is the situation here? What are the problems? How can I solve it? And then you can actually build that into a business. Okay? That's how I'm educating my kids. And that's why we educate from home, because there's no teacher, there's no school, no Montessori school, no whatever fancy school out there that's going to teach them that. There are things that are trying out there to kind of do that. But when you have one teacher and 20 kids, every kid's going to be at a different level. The teacher's only going to have so much time with the kids. And you fundamentally have the parent isn't there to see what's happening every day. So when the kids are interacting, they're cracking jokes and having fun, which don't get me wrong, I'm cool with that. Like, kids should be able to have fun and socialize, but at a certain age and in a certain environment. It's our responsibility to engineer that. Because I'll give you one more example. There's a town kind of near us, and my son loves to go to the park because he likes to swing. And my wife took him there a week ago, but they went later in the day than normal. So normally they go around noon, just having fun, whatever. The weather's getting nicer here. And then one day they went at 3:30, and it must have been right when the local elementary school gets out. And my wife just called me out. She was just telling me what the dinner plan is. And I could hear these kids in the background. Some of these kids are freaking screaming. Not like a fun, gleeful scream. This kid has been suppressed all day and is probably on ADD meds, and this kid needs to be outside, and he is screaming out there's an emotion to it. And that kid is just, and I just heard that in 30 seconds being on the phone with my wife. I'm like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to put my son there at this time, unless if I'm there to direct the situation, cool. But your kids pick up on that stuff. You got to really be aware of that. Especially when your kids are really young and really malleable, they are going to pick up on that. And now if your kids are older, they did pick up on that. So isn't it your responsibility as a parent to make sure your kid can actually process all of that? Process the underlying emotional baggage that they've got from being part of the world, and to be able to learn new things rapidly so they have that confidence that they can do anything. Okay? I'm talking way beyond system standards. I'm talking like, not like Department of Education, what they think your kid should be doing. I'm saying like, you as a parent, is your kid going to be able to thrive in the future? So if you don't have a plan for that and you're interested in that, one, I have some more videos on this, but I think I've explained enough in this video. Reach out to me. I can show you, like, I want to hear your situation. Again, maybe you're totally opposed to homeschooling and you want to keep your kid in school, but you want to make sure they get straight A's. Cool, let's chat. Maybe your wife has to work 2 jobs and you have to work 2 jobs and you don't have the time for that. Okay, let's still chat, because what happens a year from now if nothing really changes? Like, for real, if you keep going at the same pace, what's going to happen? Sometimes you need an outside impulse, you could call it, an outside little nudge, because relationships can change the entire trajectory of your life. And my goal is to create the best relationships, lifelong relationships with people committed to be the best version of themselves and to create the best world for themselves and their kids. That's my purpose. And so why I make these videos is for the people who hear this and resonate with this to reach out. Shoot me a message on Facebook. I'll include the link below. And then let's just connect, because I'm really freaking good at supporting families with this. And I'm really freaking good at supporting specifically dads, but my wife is great at supporting the wives and, kind of vice versa. But this is what I've dedicated my life to, because I see this is the most important thing I can do, and I'm uniquely equipped to be able to do this. So if you see that education is the most important thing for your kid to be ready for the future and for you to have a really good life, reach out, because I can show you how to innovate what you're currently doing. And it's the most remarkable thing in the world. All right, see ya.